This is a Fangirls Going Rogue priority transmission.
All team, give it everything you got!
It's time to fangirl flail with Fangirls Going Rogue.
Count me in. Never get between a Mandalorian and a weapons package.
This is the way.
News, discussion, and commentary from the female point of view.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
She's as important as he is.
With your hosts, Trisha Barr and Sarah Woloski.
Boy, am I glad to hear your voice.
Strap in, because this is where the fun begins.
I like the sound of that.
Hello, this is Trisha Barr from Fangirls Going Rogue podcast. On December 3rd, a new Star Wars show, Skeleton Crew, will debut with 2 episodes on Disney+. Star Wars Skeleton Crew follows the journey of 4 kids who make a mysterious discovery on their seemingly safe home planet, then get lost in a strange and dangerous galaxy. Finding their way home and meeting unlikely allies and enemies will be a greater adventure than they ever imagined. Fangirls Going Rogue had a chance to sit down with executive producers and showrunners Jon Watts and Chris Ford, the director-writer team behind Spider-Man: Homecoming. Joining us on this roundtable were Mike Celestino on behalf of Skywalking Through Neverland, George from Star Wars Holocron, and William Devereux from Iron Cannon Podcast. While we can't share our reviews yet, we can say that this interview showcases the enthusiasm of Watts and Ford for Star Wars storytelling and their optimistic approach to the Jedi. If you weren't sure about the show, we think this interview will light the way.
Hi, guys. So good to chat with you. Thank you so much for doing this. My first question is for Chris Ford. I want to quote you from Star Wars Celebration 2022. You said... You said, to be clear, we want to make sure that everyone gets it. Gets that it's starring 4 kids, but it's not a kids show. So my question is, what have been the challenges of making that clear to the audience as the series approaches? Because I've seen some folks still assuming that it is for kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said that from the get-go because we got how that would potentially be slightly confusing. But, you know, when we wrote came up with the idea for the show, the main characters were kids, but we were just wanting to tell a story, and the story was full of danger and adventure because they were lost in Star Wars Galaxy. So, you know, it was something that if someone else had been making it and I heard about it, I would definitely want to watch it as a grown adult man. But I also knew that it would be something I'd be excited to watch with my kids. So, you know, our aim is we want it to be for people who don't know anything about Star Wars and just want to watch a good show because it's a great entry point. But we also want it to be for super fans like us, and we try to make it work on both levels.
Yeah, I think there's something about Star Wars when it really works, like it makes you feel like you're 10 years old, no matter how old you are. So that's sort of the audience that we're looking for.
Hi, Trisha Barr from Fangirls Going Rogue podcast. Star Wars is the most iconic myth of our time. In Skeleton Crew, the idea of myth takes multiple forms. Can you talk about myth as a theme in your story?
Yes, that's a great question. You start.
I mean,
I like to think about like Wimp's story, Pat. And
No,
like him,
yeah, exactly. I mean, we wanted to include that, and we didn't want it. We wanted to include the idea that these kids had heard of Jedi and tales of, you know, good versus evil in that kind of way. In our planet, we have fairy tales or, you know, King Arthur stories of the Knights of the Round Table, much like this round table. But we wanted to make sure we did it in a careful way where it didn't feel like a weird meta thing. So Wim and his friends, you know, they know about Jedi. They've read Jedi stories. They even do a pretend lightsaber fight. But we were very clear we didn't want to cross certain lines. Like when they pretend to do a lightsaber, they make the wrong noise because they haven't seen the movies. They've never seen a lightsaber in real life. So it was like finding ways to make it be authentic to the Star Wars galaxy. Like their toys aren't from Kenner. They're like little, more like tin toys, like a little more old fashioned kind of pre-commercialization kind of a toy.
Yeah, and it's the idea that they want to go on their own sort of mythic journey based on these stories that they've heard. But the reality is that, when you find an adventure, sometimes it's a lot scarier than it is, in your storybook.
Yeah, there's this push and pull in mythology. Like you want to go on the adventure, but what you're trying to do is defend what was good about the home you came from. And we like that it was kind of an unanswerable question of like, what's better, like safety or adventure? You need both.
Hi, George from Star Wars Holocron and the Holophiles. Really nice to meet both of you. We really enjoyed the show, found it to be really engaging. There's this beautiful kind of timeless quality about it. And I'm curious if you wouldn't mind going into a little bit of what made you want to set this story specifically between episodes 6 and 7, kind of in and around Mandalorian, Ahsoka, given that it does have that kind of timeless quality where it seemed like it would fit really anywhere.
Well, we like the idea that time in the galaxy is a little bit
less settled.
Things are a little bit more up in the air. And if you're gonna pick a time to have a group of kids get lost in the galaxy and there's not really gonna be anyone there that can rescue them and bring them home, this felt like the right time.
Yeah, and then just practically, like we were working closely with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and they had been delving into that time period and fleshing it out. And there's so many exciting things happening in that time period that we wanted, we you're right, like this could have been in lots of different time periods, but we felt like putting it there would be really interesting and exciting.
Yeah, they're already
the ramifications.
Yeah, they're already exploring those sort of corners of the galaxy, and we thought we could sort of slide right in there.
Hey everyone, William Devereux, Ion Cannon Podcast. I want to kind of touch on something somewhat similar to what Trisha had brought up. One of my favorite aspects of The Force Awakens is that this like boundless optimism and enthusiasm and excitement and the reverence for the Jedi. And we see that here in Skeleton Crew as well, especially with Wim, but with Neil. And I think personally, I think it's a big reason why the show it just is so engaging right off the bat and draws you in. I'm assuming this was intentional. I was curious if you could share more about that. If so.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we knew that we wanted a kid to kind of drive them getting lost, because the kid was going to be this dreamer and he believed in all of the amazing stories of the Jedi and was hoping to have this beautiful adventure. But because he was young and naive, he didn't really think through what is an adventure? Adventure is when you're in terrible danger and it's super scary and bad, and he's accidentally roped his friends into this. So that kind of unbridled optimism is such a fun starting point, but then we challenge it, and I think as the series goes on, we show both the negative sides of it, but also how it can win out in the end and be a force that's really powerful and important.
Hi again, Mike Celestino covering for Skywalking Through Neverland today. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself last time. With tomorrow being Life Day, I want to ask you a question about the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yes.
Without spoiling too much, you do have a tribute to something from in the very first episode of Skeleton Crew from the Star Wars Holiday Special. I really want to know how that came together. Was it a recreation, or did you use original footage from the 70s?
we thought we would be able to use footage.
Yeah, we thought we might be able to use some pre-existing footage, but no, it was like way too low resolution and the wrong angles. We had to, recreate this moment from multiple angles because you see it in various parts of the scene. So we rebuilt the whole thing from scratch. We had to dig up the original designs for the costumes, which were in the Lucasfilm archive.
And our costume designer actually knew that costume designer and was able to figure out who had done it, and my gosh,
get all the original specs. We had to redo the music from scratch because there was no copy of the actual score anywhere, so we had to sort of rebuild that and
reorchestrate it out. It was so much work. We didn't know what we were getting into.
Yeah, it ended up being like 20 times more work than we anticipated. And our stunt coordinator is the main performer in it, and he was able to re-choreograph the routine too, because it's a very acrobatic routine, and he used to be in Cirque du Soleil as well, so that helped. So
it all came together. But
I will say, without saying what it is, which I think is probably pretty obvious by now, It was so much work. And it's so worth it. My
I
favorite.
laughed really loudly when that happened. Thank you.
Good. That's what I still laugh when it comes on. Just when you start to hear that music, it just really cracks me up.
I'm recognizing a lot of nods to existing Star Wars Legends lore in this show. Were those things that you brought to the story, kind of tying off the holiday special discussion, or that there were things that Lucasfilm said, hey, this would fit with your story?
It was both. You're working with the incredible like Lucasfilm design team with like Doug Chang and everyone over there, and it was always just a conversation. We'd start by talking about things from like a story perspective or a character perspective. Say maybe it's this kind of thing, maybe it's that kind of thing, and there was always someone. As soon as they knew that we were comfortable with maybe more like obscure deep cut references, like that really opened up the floodgates where they're like, oh well, what character you might be able to put in.
Yeah, it was really cool because we started long enough ago that I was asking them like, oh, can you get me a copy of the Ewok movies? And they were giving it to us like only on their like proprietary file sharing system.
Yeah, it wasn't on Disney Plus.
Yeah, and then now it is on Disney Plus, and it's like so much more convenient. You're gonna go check out a scene. But yeah, so we were making references to that, and then they got excited and then they made even more references to that.
Yeah, I remember talking about Captain EO and they were like, well, technically that's George Lucas too. So, is there anything you would want to steal from Captain EO?
Yeah, so the kids' homeworld in the show looks more like Earth than anything we've really seen from Star Wars before, that kind of Amblin suburbia. And I think it works so well in the context of the show. What went into that decision to have a planet that looks so similar to Earth, and how is it trying to strike that balance between making it still seem like it's, in a galaxy far, far away, but then also harkening back to the world we live in?
I think the suburbs probably look pretty exotic to someone that like grew up in the desert. So like there's different kinds of like what's earthbound versus what's not earthbound, but to us it was like it started again just like it's a story perspective. It's like we wanted to create an environment that feels safe and protected and sort of evoked that feeling of you're a kid and you don't want to do your homework and you want to run away and have an adventure.
Yeah, and so much in Star Wars design is taking things from Earth and making them, referencing them so that you immediately get something. Like the thing that Doug Chang is so good at is like something that's an instant read, and you don't need to spend a lot of time on it to understand it, and it could evoke so much.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes out in strange ways where they'll repurpose the shape of something and turn it into a spaceship. But we just felt really strongly that allowing their planet to be feeling like a gated community was the right language that would allow us to tell our story and make it really clear.
Yeah, it started kind of as just a story pitch of like, what would that world look like? A world that you would, as a kid, you would feel like you would want to escape and go on an adventure. And then the conversation like developed into what you ended up seeing in the show.
Yeah, and we love those mundane places. Like I really love like Aunt Beru's kitchen and all the little beeps and boops and the juicer she's using or whatever. And so, when we're in the suburban kitchen, like we knew there was stuff we could draw on that was still going to feel so Star Warsy, even though it was a kitchen in a house.
That was Ford's favorite set. Like he would want to just like live in Wim's house.
I would just hang out on the couch.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of ships in Star Wars, but the Onyx Cinder feels very unique. It almost feels like a ghost pirate ship. Is there something in particular that inspired the design and the environment? I think that's
exactly what we would call it. Like we would say we want it to feel like a ghost pirate ship. Like,
awesome. Good.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple different, pulled from history references in there. There's kind of a shape that's kind of from like an ironclad shape of these early naval ships where they first started putting metal armor on a boat. And just the idea of it having like extra big engines because it was really heavy and bulky. It just kind of cracked us up for the ship that these kids end up flying around being not really meant for kids.
No,
it's like industrial equipment.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a very brutal design, and then you put 4 kids, in the cockpit.
Yeah, and we wanted it to be big enough that it could be kind of like a haunted house that they get lost in.
Yeah, it's like you put 4 kids in like a tank or a semi truck or something like that. Like, just where should they not be? What car should they not be driving?
Yep. Stay tuned for info on our Skeleton Crew Fangirls Going Rogue Zoom chats, where we invite you to share your reactions to the episodes. Details will be available at fangirlsgoingrogue.com and our social media. In addition to Threads and Instagram, you can find us over at Blue Sky as follows. Fangirls Going Rogue at FG Going Rogue, Trisha at Fangirl Cantina, Sarah at Jedi Tink, email contact@fangirlsgoingrogue.com, Facebook, Fangirls Going Rogue. Please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. We need your reviews so more people can find us. Until next time, yub, yub!